In this lesson, we'll look at Shostakovich's harmonic style. Here I'll talk about the first prelude from his 24 preludes and fugues, which is typical of his harmony. Let's listen. Shostakovich was a composer who was comfortable with being part of the European tradition. He was not trying to be revolutionary just for the sake of being different. So often his harmony is diatonic and he uses chords based on thirds. However, like Fauré, he finds ways to make it very personal, often using what I call linear harmony. In linear harmony, smooth voice leading makes unexpected chords sound logical in context. Often the composer will use a familiar bass line, but the chords or voice leading above are unusual. See below for a link to my online lesson about linear harmony. If we look at the first bars of the prelude, they're completely diatonic in C major. In measure 3, the tonic and dominant chords are enriched with the added note A. Then, in measure 5, the 7th chord on the second beat is treated like a passing chord. The 7th, G, is not resolved. Then, in measure 7 to 8, harmony moves into C minor over a C pedal. The following answering phrase starts the same way, but look at what happens in measure 12 on the second beat. This chord introduces 3 chromatic notes at the same time, A flat, C flat, and F sharp. These simultaneous alterations give this chord a very strong accent within such a diatonic context. The crescendo reinforces the accent. Note that the voiceling is all conjunct and that there's one common tone, G. Another clear example of linear harmony. The next phrase in measure 13-14 is an E flat major over an E flat pedal. The surprising resolution is underlined by the sudden pianissimo dynamic. A normal tonal bass line from 1 to 5 is filled out in the upper voices by stepwise motion, once again leading to unusual harmony. Then a new motive arrives, leading us to a G flat major chord followed by an A flat major chord, then a diminished 7th, then a dominant 7th on E. The G sharp is spelled in an A flat here. This dominant 7th leads us to a G in the bass in measure 18. This harmonic wandering is held together by the scalar, rising bass line going up from B flat to G, so it has a sense of direction toward the home dominant. In the next phrase, starting in measure 19, the harmony is more dissonant. The added notes here and in measure 20 are now chromatic semitones. Apart from that, the main lines are diatonic, back in C major until measure 26. The bass line is a simple circle of fifths in measure 19 to 22, and then stepwise. In measure 26, the music seems to modulate due to the B flat and D flat. But the chords which would normally act as the new tonic, B flat, in Measure 26 and 28 contain an added note G that leaves them unstable. In measure 29, more added note chords lead to two seventh chords in measure 30. The second chord contains two new accidentals, again providing an accent within this phrase. The return of the eighth note motive in measure 31 rises up as though in E flat minor. At the climax of this line, the right hand plays the most salient dissonance yet, the major seventh between the left hand and the top voice of the right hand, F sharp against F natural. It's not a coincidence that this is the climax of this part of the piece. This in turn leads back to C major in measure 35, where Shostakovich recapitulates the opening exactly until measure 43. Measure 43 has the same melodic line as the first two bars, E to D, but a different bass. This 6/4 chord, that would normally go to a 5 of E minor, resolves instead into a 5/6/5 of C major. This is, again, linear harmony, where above a classical bass line, the upper parts are filled out with something unexpected, but the smooth voice leading makes it sound logical nonetheless. Now the bass starts a stepwise descent. In measure 50 to 52, despite an octave displacement between B flat and A, this stepwise bass line finally arrives at G, the home dominant, where we have the climax of the piece on the highest notes. Now every bar from measure 41 on introduces new accidentals, so what we might call the rhythm of modulation intensifies a lot, especially compared to the original diatonic material that we just heard being repeated. Coming down from the climax, the bass goes through the circle of fifths in measure 54 to 57. These bars are a variation of measures 19 to 22. Then we hear the eighth note motive for the last time, leading to the final cadence. Here the bass goes from B flat to G to C, the tonic. Note that the chord above the G is not a normal dominant, rather a 3/6, but given the context here, that sounds cadential. The prelude ends with the return to the opening material, once again completely diatonic. Now the bass alternates between C and D, the latter acting as a sort of neighbor note dominant, and then ends with the tonic. To sum up, the beginning is completely diatonic in C major, and the harmonic contrasts get gradually more intense. But the bass line, as in classical tonal harmony, always creates direction and coherence, particularly with stepwise progressions. The harmonic surprises are always arrived at with smooth voice leading, typical of linear harmony. Finally, these harmonic surprises are carefully planned in terms of intensity to correspond with key moments of the form. In other words, the form breathes. As with 4A, this can be a kind of expanded tonality, allowing for both common tonal progressions and also more personal harmony. In Shostakovich's larger works, like his symphonies, this helps him to achieve a very large emotional range, which is one of the most compelling aspects of his music. For example, the ends of his 13th and 15th symphonies are clearly tonal, but following, as they do, much more intense dramatic passages that provide a powerful sense of resolution.